It seems that in some states, long lines and machine failures are becoming epidemic. There may be a reason for that. We talked with Sylvia Albert, a lawyer with Common Cause. Common Cause has been in the business of checking and protecting elections in the United States for 50 years. About what's going on. Check it out, leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. But first, I wanted to talk about the process. And to that, Sylvia Albert is on the line. She is the Director of Voting and Elections at Common Cause and an attorney with decades of public interest law experience. CommonCause.org is the website, of course, the Twitter handle @CommonCause. And Common Cause has been working in this area for over 50 years and doing just extraordinary work. Sylvia, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm looking at this story from today's Guardian. McLennan County, home to Waco, Texas, closed 44% of its polling places between 2012 and 2018, despite the fact that its population grew by more than 15,000. Two-thirds of that growth came from Black and Latinx residents. In 2012, there was one polling place for every 4,000 residents. By 2018, it has down to one polling place for 7,700 residents. In Brazoria County, south of Houston, closed almost 60% of its polling locations between 2012 and 2018. The 50 counties that gained the most Black and Latinx residents between 2012 and 2018 closed 542 polling sites, compared to just 34 closures in the 50 counties that have gained the most white people or the fewest Black and Latino residents. What the hell is going on here? Forgive my language.
Sure. So, unfortunately, what you're seeing is the result of the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act in 2013. It used to be that states with a history of voter suppression had to check in with the federal government before they made these massive changes that would disproportionately impact people of color. But the Supreme Court in 2013 kind of said, we kind of think racism might be fixed, and gutted the Voting Rights Act. So what you're seeing now is states all over the country who are implementing more suppressive voting rights laws and closing locations everywhere. And as you said, it's having a devastating effect in communities of Black and brown people.
Yeah, and people standing in line, 2, 3, 5, 6, 10 hours to vote. I mean, this is insane. What were you hearing at Common Cause? I know you were running a toll-free number, were you not, last night?
Yes, we are partners. We're part of the Election Protection Coalition, so we have a phone line that runs as long as the polls are open, 866-OUR-VOTE, and I was there for 18 hours yesterday.
Whoa.
And, sadly, what I can tell you is it was a fairly routine election day. Machines were down, new and old machines were down, polling locations were closed. Misinformation was being spread on the internet or through robocalls about when and where to vote. 5, 6, 7 hour long lines. And the sad thing is that really is just very typical.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be. I mean, there are several places in the Constitution where the phrase right to vote is referenced. The 1993 Motor Voter Act, there's an official name for it, but that's what everybody calls it, both in the preamble and in the act itself says voting is a right in the United States. Why is it simply because the Supreme Court in 2000 said there is no right to vote for President of the United States in the Constitution? Is it that the Supreme Court has never, that the 93 Voting Rights, Motor Voter Act has never been tested before the Supreme Court? Why is it that it's easier for Florida and Texas to take away somebody's vote than it is for them to take away somebody's gun?
Well, what you're seeing really is a result of the 50-state plus the district and territories system we have. Every state and down to county and down to city runs their own elections the way they want to. And what that means is that gives political actors an opportunity to manipulate the laws for partisan gain. So we often see, depending on whether it's a Democrat or Republican, gerrymandering the lines, so that certain voters' votes do not, quote unquote, count as much as others.
Right.
The amount of money in politics, the closing of polling locations, the unfair amount of money that's being distributed to different counties to purchase machines. This is really about abusing the system for partisan gain, and unfortunately, that is able to happen more in some states than others, and it just might be that people aren't paying attention, or it's just kind of the ingrained power structure within the state that makes it harder to make changes.
In California, there were long lines. California is, a state run by Democrats. You would think that they would have their act together. I realize they had new voting systems in some places, particularly LA County. In Texas, I was watching the coverage. We were kind of channel surfing last night, and at one point, Rachel Maddow went off on a rant about, Texas is a Republican-controlled state, and why are they making it harder to vote? And then the next 2 or 3 people who came on were from democratically controlled counties, and they made it a point of saying, well, the local election stuff here is actually controlled by the county, which is democratically controlled. So, if you have a criticism, you need to take it up with them, essentially. I don't know how true that is. I don't know, if those counties can't get resources from the state, for example. But your thoughts on, you've already, spoken somewhat to what happened last night, but B, what should we expect in November?
So part of the reason, and a big part of the reason that we are here as an advocacy organization and with our partners, is that we are paying attention when everybody isn't. So our coalition, Election Protection, is 365 days a year. You guys see us on Election Day because you call us, but we are looking at all of these issues every single day and working with local elections officials to advocate for more resources, more machines, better reforms that expand access to voting, like online voter registration or automatic voter registration. And what we did see the last couple of years very positively is that the coalition was part of a team that was able to secure $800 million for the states in the last 2 omnibus bills for election improvement and election security. And so that's the kind of thing that we really need to be paying attention to and to really pushing. It really shouldn't be one-off every few years or often every 10 years since the last HAVA funds. There needs to be sustained, economic support for the states to implement elections every year. We have to, as citizens, have to put our money where our mouth is and say elections are important, and this is where we want our money to be spent. Right. So, all the problems we saw yesterday, we are going to be working with elections officials and our advocate partners to try to find fixes for them and improve them before November. And the cycle will continue, really. Yeah.
H.R. 1, the first piece of legislation that Nancy Pelosi got out of the House of Representatives when she became Speaker, addresses many of these issues and does a really great job of it, as far as I can tell. I'm curious, and it passed the House of Representatives no problem, but Mitch McConnell literally will not even allow committees in the Senate to take a look at this piece of legislation, much less any kind of debate on the floor. Is it going to come down to, if we want to have election protection, if we want to stop naked suppression of the vote, stealing of our votes, particularly in black and brown communities by Republican secretaries of state, that the only way to do that is for Democrats to show up in such overwhelming numbers that we can take back the Senate?
Well, we are supporters of H.R. 1, obviously, but we also want to note that it's not just at the federal level that you can make these changes. Mm-hmm. So, as we know, H.R. 1 does not have a chance of getting past Mitch McConnell to be onto the floor to get votes.
Right. And I realize you're not a partisan organization. Yeah. I wasn't trying to get you to endorse a partisan action. I'm sorry, Sylvia. But anyhow, continue your thought.
That's okay. I was just going to point out that, at the state level, we are getting positive changes. Mm-hmm. Last year in Michigan, voters overwhelmingly approved expansion of their voting rights. Pennsylvania this last year passed no excuse absentee voting, which is a wonderful advantage, so that you don't have to, have a doctor's note to be able to absentee vote.
To vote by mail, yeah.
Right, to vote by mail. We have various redistricting campaigns happening in different states, so that. And by the way, these are Democrat and Republican states where the party in power is not supportive of redistricting because it would lose seats for them.
Yeah.
So regardless of what party is in power, you can work at your state level to advocate for these positive changes. And what we hope is that that's, kind of creates a domino effect and forces the federal government to implement on a national scale.